So your devices are telling you that something is wrong, but since you can't handle it, you never even get it in front of a human.
Welcome back to Stand Out Before RSA. The series continues to be all about cybersecurity leaders who are bringing clarity and differentiation into the market as we head into the noisy event that is RSA in a couple weeks. Right now, if you listen to the industry and participate in the industry long enough, everything starts to sound the same. It's AI-powered detection, smarter automations, faster responses, things of that nature. But if you talk to any SOC team, you'll hear the same challenge over and over again. They're drowning in alerts. The real problem isn't just detection, it's really about investigation. And today I'm joined by Seth Summersett, co-founder and CEO of Embed Security. Embed is building an agentic security platform designed to autonomously investigate and prioritize security alerts, helping security teams focus on what is actually important and actually real instead of just chasing noise. So Seth, it's great to have you on the show. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me here, Gary.
Absolutely. So, as I just kind of said, I think security teams, today have more tools than they ever had before, more alerts kind of pinging on them than ever before. Yet they're really struggling to investigate everything that's coming into them. So from your perspective, I guess what is fundamentally broken about how security operations handle alerts today?
Yeah, I think it's sort of multifold. We've got too many alerts coming in because every security device feels like it needs to alert. And so you get this over alerting that happens. So teams are having to deal with that over alerting. But second, and probably most important, is that triage and investigation. It's just too fixed in the way that it works, meaning teams either use human playbooks that they've generated or they use automation playbooks. But ultimately, it's a very static methodology that's applied to a dynamic problem, right? Attackers and incidents, they're not static. And so when you apply static tools and methodologies to them, you just end up in a mismatch.
Yep. So I'm curious, with all the volume, right, that SOC teams are dealing with, at what point does that volume itself become a security risk, right? There's the alerts and all the bad things that are actually happening, but the risk of being kind of inundated in alerts, where is that? Is that a troublesome point for these SOC teams?
Yeah. I think it's troublesome at the point where teams are having to filter those alerts, right? If you're filtering, ignoring, that kind of stuff, that's where you get into a lot of problems. So your devices are telling you that something is wrong, but since you can't handle it, you never even get it in front of a human or potentially automation that helps you to get through it. So that's a huge part of the problem of over alerting. And then, it exemplifies itself in many ways. One is missing actual attacks, but another way is that, when team members just feel overwhelmed and they end up, burning out, leaving the team, moving to other companies, that kind of thing. And then what's going out the door is that tribal knowledge that they gained over the last several years on how to disposition alerts, how the company functions, understanding the business, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah. So I guess on that point, on the investigation side, right, I feel like there's been this, heavy focus in the industry on detection, right? Better signals, better analytics, threat intelligence, things of that nature. But you guys seem to focus kind of what happens after the alert fires, like, the behind the scenes after that. So why is investigation, I think you just kind of touched on it, but if you could expand on it, it'd be great. Why is investigation really the bottleneck in the modern security operation?
I think it's because it's time consuming, right? And when you think about, you get these alerts, you get low priority alerts, you get medium priority alerts, you get high and critical. And so, a lot of teams will just focus on the critical because it takes so much time, right? When you get an alert in, you've got to think about, why am I even getting this alert? Then you've got to contextualize that alert. Then you've got to add, threat intelligence into that alert. Then you have to go out and potentially talk to the end user and say, hey, like, was this really you doing this? Or is this normal? Like that kind of stuff. And so ultimately it can take, minutes, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, or it could take an hour or two to get through triage and investigate something. So now if you multiply that by, potentially hundreds or thousands of alerts a day, it just doesn't scale.
Right. And so as you were dealing with your clients and their situations, right, that you're helping to solve for them. I guess as you start the relationship with these clients, are you seeing that the investigation processes that the SOC teams are using are processes that haven't changed in say 10, 15 years and really are archaic and they just haven't caught up? Because obviously there's a lot going on in the cyberspace, but I feel like in certain areas there's, we're lagging behind a little bit. So is investigation one of those processes that is really kind of behind the times a little bit?
I would say at scale, yes. But I definitely come across organizations that have really dialed in processes. But I would say on the aggregate, most organizations struggle in this area. They struggle to hire folks in this area. They struggle to retain them, and then they struggle to kind of create robust processes. And so, yeah, it's definitely a problem in a lot of places. And it's easier for organizations, or at least it appears in most cases, easier for organizations to, buy a detection device and deploy it out to their network than it does for them to, invest in a security operations process.
Right. Okay. So Seth, let's talk for a minute about Embed, right? You describe your platform as Agentic Security, which is obviously, agentic is a term that we're using as being kind of all over the AI world. But in your case, what does Agentic Security actually mean in terms of in practice for a SOC team?
Yeah. I think if you think about yesterday's automation, right, was very much like a if this then that kind of a thing where, you configure all of these playbooks and you get the if this then that and all that. And it didn't have the ability to reason or make judgment, right? And so with this agentic security, where that's going and what that's bringing into the security operations center is the ability for the automation that organizations deploy to be able to reason and make judgments, which allows them to be very dynamic. And so in the past, they haven't really been able to be dynamic like that. It's, hey, I've configured this playbook in this way, and it does this, and that, if that. And then when something new or different comes in, it can't really handle it, right? It doesn't handle the gray area very well. And these agentic systems really allow us to have a bunch of building blocks and then leverage those in a very dynamic way.
Right. So it sounds like you're training AI to, like how the security analyst would actually investigate the incident. But, why is that kind of the replication process so important in effectively building the security AI? And I guess secondarily to that, what are the challenges or risks that are associated with that? As, obviously the risk profile of AI is always, a hot topic.
Yeah. So I think why would we replicate what analysts are doing? I mean, I think the first reason there is like, why reinvent the wheel, right? We have processes and things that work. We have things that we built up and learned and over decades now. So why just start from square zero when we can start down the road a bit? So we definitely want to leverage what we've learned over the last several decades. But I think second to that is trust, right? So if the AI goes out and it investigates in some really random way, even if it ends up at the right answer, an analyst looking at that would be like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this, right? But if what that's doing is what the analyst would expect, or if what that's doing is what that analyst sees somebody that they are learning from or looking up to does, then there's a much larger base of trust that is built between the analyst and the AI. And that's a huge gap that we have to get over is, hey, if you're going to trust this to automate, if you want this to automate things for you, you need to trust it. And so building that trust is extremely important. So being able to replicate the analyst is a key to that.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's potential for a lot of gray area there, right? Between there's the black and white of what should or shouldn't happen, but there's maybe that human element that we would typically rely on of digesting the information, processing it based on maybe this is the way we've always done it, or here's what we know from our own kind of, like you said earlier, tribal knowledge, right? But I'm interested in that gray area because I don't know if I'm a college basketball referee as well, and there's the rule book and everything's black and white in the rule book, but you get on the court and it gets very gray very quickly, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's the same here. So has that been a challenge for you guys or continues to be, or kind of massaging that gray area and figuring out how best to proceed in the AI space?
Yeah, I think dealing with that gray area is an important part of a dynamic system, right? So at Embed, out of the box, when you deploy it, it will be able to triage and investigate alerts just like a seasoned analyst would, right? And so that's a big part of what we're bringing to the table. But every organization is not the same, right? Some organizations may be okay with, folks coming in from VPNs. Others, maybe they don't allow that. Some are like, hey, it's okay for this person to access, this financial information, but it's not okay for that person to access that financial information. And so that's a good chunk of that gray area is like, well, what do you do in some of these situations? And that's where the Noise IQ knowledge base comes in that we have. So we will learn that gray area. We will learn that context, organizational context. And so over time, we build that up. And that way your tribal knowledge doesn't leave when an analyst leaves, right? It's embedded into the product. And that helps us to reduce that gray area that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Seth, you used the word trust a few times in a couple of your answers. Obviously, that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
But how do you at Embed approach transparency and sort of explainability in these investigations, right? AI tells the SOC analyst that an alert is either good or bad, benign or critical. I want to understand why, right? What's that transparency look like so I can quickly understand and ascertain what's, good, bad, and indifferent?
Yeah. The transparency and explainability is a fundamental building block for us at Embed. When Jeff and I started a company, we were very clear that we don't want this to be a black box where we tell you this is good and this is bad, and then you as the analyst have to. I don't know how it came to that answer, right? We did not want that, and so definitely like a foundational element at the company. But what does it look like? It looks like exposing the details of our investigation. So we expose it through our investigative step, which we call I-steps. So we expose how we're doing the investigation through there. We expose the summarization of like how we came to these decisions of whether we think this I-step is malicious or this other I-step is benign. But then we allow you to click into those summarizations and see what were the exact questions and the evidence that came to help us answer that question as yes, this is good, or no, this is bad. And then we expose the queries that we make into external systems, right? So there's a lot of, it's not just we get an alert and then we, try to give you an answer based on the alert alone. That would be really not great. And so we go out to all these other systems, and it's the process of going out to those other systems. We expose to you, hey, what's the query that we actually did? We give you some of the sample of the data that kind of came back from there. So that way the analyst can look at that and build and gain that confidence that we are showing them the process on how we got there.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah. So just continuing down the path of AI, right? I think the hot topic in AI in the macro is when and if, or I guess if and when, will AI replace human roles, right? Just across the board in general. But, at Embed, looking at what you guys do, it seems like you guys are very focused on the augmentation of analysts rather than replacement, right? So how do you see that relationship evolving inside the SOC specifically as you guys are doing your thing with the Agentic AI and there's those, very human analysts still working in the SOC? Like, how does that relationship evolve over time?
Yeah. Like you said, we see it as additive, right? On what's happening there. We see it replacing certain functions in a security operations center, but not just wholesale replacing, all the humans in the security operations center. So, in time, we're going to see, tasks offload. We're going to see, analysts take on new and different ones. But if you think about it, it's so where an analyst would have to like sit down and triage every single alert themselves and go out and gather the data and bring that back and then try to reason about that. Instead of them doing all of that, now what they're doing is that they are validating the results of the investigation that, say, Embed has done. And then as they build confidence and trust and those other types of things, they're just validating things probably that are malicious and going through that, or things that we think are inconclusive. And so the role is going to change, and what they do day to day is going to change. But what they're going to be able to accomplish as an entire team combined with the AI is more than they could do just strictly using human resources. So I definitely see the roles changing. I see the environment changing, but I don't think you're going to see an empty SOC where it's just chairs with nobody in them.
Right. So is it, say, like 5 years from now, is it more while the team remains, it's maybe more strategic than kind of actionable, I guess, with the agentic AI is taking some of the actionable items, whereas the analysts themselves are thinking more big picture and kind of, more broadly. Is it a fair way to view it?
Yeah, I do think we're going to see things evolve from, where we're at, where we were at yesterday, where we're at today, to this, human in the loop, human on the loop, probably at some point, which is basically, hey, are we in between and it can't do anything? Are we monitoring the system to, more fully autonomous in the future? So I do think we're going to see that evolution through time. I don't think the humans will be only strategic, but I think there's going to be a lot more time for that strategic and a lot more time for that proactive work rather than reactive work, because you were spending time over here. And then hopefully as we, evolve out of all of this reactive work and are spending more time on the proactive work, there will be less of the reactive work that actually needs to be done, hopefully. So we're hopefully by making this better and freeing up time, we're shifting things left and focusing more on, the attackers that are knocking on the door rather than the attackers that are taking our data.
Great. So I wanted to, as we start to wrap up here, I want to just kind of put the spotlight on you a little bit. Personally, you've got a deep background in this industry. You've done a lot of great things, and obviously you're in the midst of building a startup that's tackling a pretty deeply entrenched problem in the cyberspace. What have you learned about building a security company? The challenges, the speed bumps that you can share with other people to maybe help them avoid some of the pitfalls of the startup world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say things are moving a lot faster now than what they used to. So, at a startup, you have a number of advisors. I would highly recommend anybody doing a startup to make sure you have a good breadth of different advisors that come from different walks of life, so you can kind of get that feedback and that input as you're moving along the way. But as I've talked to a number of those folks that have also been founders in the past, they're like, hey, things are just moving so much faster now than what they used to. So you don't have as much time to spend, building things out and evolving things at a certain pace as you get to a certain growth trajectory. And so they're like, hey, like these timelines that we used to talk about as like 3 to 5 years are now like, 1 to 2 year type of compression. So I think thinking about it from that perspective is definitely something that I would recommend new founders to really think through when they're thinking about this as they're working in this new AI security world.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really helpful advice. So, Seth, I know you guys are going to be at RSA at the early stage expo, but if you could tell the listeners, viewers, if they want to learn more about Embed Security and aren't going to be on site at RSA, where can they follow you guys? Where can they find you? And kind of stay in touch with you guys.
Yeah, you can definitely find us at Embed Security on LinkedIn. And then we highly recommend you come to our website, embedsecurity.com, and check out our use cases as well as our blog, and follow us there. And then we've got a number of white papers and other things that folks can download and learn from.
Awesome. Well, Seth, this has been a really great conversation. I appreciate it. You guys are doing a lot in a great space in the cyber industry. So we really appreciate your insight. And the perspective that you brought to the conversation. AI is obviously a hot topic. You guys are doing great things. And I love the idea of the augmentation versus replacement. I know that's a worry for a lot of folks. So, doing great things to keep companies safe, but also keeping, teams intact at the same time. So really appreciate the conversation. Thank you again for everyone for joining us as we help companies stand out before RSA.